What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about what the heck is going on with my grip.
How'd you get to be so cool?
So I have received a lot of comments from different videos that we've done where people have asked what is going on with this grip. They notice that one finger is significantly lower than the other. And many of you may already have heard of the Sarge Easter grip, which is, that's essentially what this is, but I have the Sarge Easter grip sort of on steroids. So I'm going to go into the specifics on what all we've got going on in here, as well as why I've done what I've done. So to start, the obvious one is you can see the Sarge Easter grip, which for those of you unaware of the Sarge Easter grip, it just basically means that the ring finger is drilled at a conventional grip, so it goes down to this knuckle as opposed to the fingertip, which is what this grip is at. I used to have a standard grip, but I shifted that down, and so as I put my hand in the ball, you can see how I now have this finger is at the knuckle, first knuckle, this one is at the second knuckle. Now, there's a lot of reasons why people do this. The two main reasons why people will do a Sarge Easter, number one is some people believe that it will cut down on the rev rate. So people who have a really high rev rate and they're trying to tame that down some will go to Sarge Easter. I've heard through the grapevine that that's what Robert Smith does. I have seen his grip, and he does have a shorter grip on the one finger, but I've heard that the reason is because he's wanting to cut the rev rate down. I also know another person who has done that. Me personally, I have not really noticed a decline in my rev rate. I don't have a super high rev rate as it is, so maybe that's part of it, but I can tell you when I switched to this, it took a little getting used to at first, but I don't feel like my rev rate has gone down. In fact, my rev rate's been going up because of some other things I've been working on, but just of the grip itself, I don't believe that it's actually cutting down my rev rate at all. Now, the other reason, which is the more common reason why people will go with the Sarge Easter grip, is if they are having pain in this part of their hand stemming down from the ring finger. And so what they'll do is, I've noticed that if I were to hinge at the top knuckle, the fingertip knuckle, and I were to pull down with that finger, I can really feel a lot of strain right through this area of my hand. However, if I come down and I actually bend that knuckle down to the second knuckle and I do the same pull with my finger, the strain is significantly less. So I can certainly understand the concept of why, if you've got pain in this part of your hand, why the Sarge Easter grip works. Now, I am doing the grip for pain reasons, but I do not have pain in this part of my hand. So my reason is a little bit different than everybody else, which we'll get into here momentarily. The second thing, which is not quite as obvious from here, but I've got what is called the Nanu Nanu grip, and Nanu Nanu is a callback to Mork and Mindy. This was the greeting. Their hand came out like this. You could also call this the Star Trek. The Nanu Nanu grip is basically taking these two fingers and spreading them apart. Now, it's not as obvious because I don't have a fingertip grip here. If I did, and I extended this all the way up, you could see that the finger would be way out here as opposed to closer in. So most people would have it here with a little bit of a bridge. I've got it much further out with a much bigger bridge. It's just I also have a Sarge Easter going on. So I've got a Nanu Nanu Sarge Easter grip. And again, I will talk about the reasons why I have split that apart, but that is the second thing I've got going on. The third thing that I've done in my grip is if you were to draw the center line of my actual grip, it actually, instead of coming straight through the center of the thumb, it actually comes through here. My center line is here, and my Pro Shop actually offsets my thumb to the left side of that center line. And in addition to that, I've got a pretty drastic left pitch going on as well, which he's got some kind of funky ways of rotating the ball and changing the either forward or reverse pitch, and as well as a left pitch, and it increases the amount of left pitch that I can get. So why do I do these three things? Well, several years ago, I was having some severe pain in my index finger knuckle. Now, I do have chronic inflammation and arthritis issues, and so this is a flare spot. My pinky is actually now a flare spot as well, but that's not really impacted in my bowling. My wrist, I've got arthritis in my wrist, and I actually do things with kinesiology tape, which we'll do a totally separate video on, but I do some stuff with the kinesiology tape to kind of hold that and brace that part of my wrist so that I don't have pain there. But this part of my knuckle on my index finger, I was having excruciating pain. The very first ball of the night would be just, I would be almost having to bite down on a belt. It hurt so bad. And while it eased up a little bit as the night went on, because I became numb to it, then as it went on and on and on, it would hurt, and then it would hurt for days beyond that as well. It was getting to the point where I was thinking I might have to either switch to left-handed or two-handed bowling. I really didn't want to have to do either one of those, so I decided first I'm going to work with my pro shop. And so I use the bowling store here inside of Mockingbird Lanes. One of the employees of the pro shop, John, who actually now lives out of state, but he actually helped me by taking one of my old balls that I don't use very often, and we just used it as a practice ball. We drilled a whole bunch of different things to try to see what was going to alleviate the pain. We did the regular Sarge Easter alone. We did changing pitches. We changed the span a little bit. We changed pitches of the thumb, location of the thumb. We tried all of these things. What we found was the Nanu Nanu was actually probably the biggest thing that really helped. And the concept behind the Nanu Nanu is that when you are holding a ball, when your hand is in the ball, even if I had a regular grip, typically your index finger is splayed out. And when your index finger is splayed away from your middle finger, it's creating a V, and the ball is actually resting inside that V. By resting inside that V, these two fingers are going to be doing, rotating the ball and coming through and getting that revolution on the ball. But you're cradling the ball here, it helps you get that angle and kind of turn your hand over. So there was a lot of weight that's being pushed onto the index finger, and that's where a lot of my pain was coming from. If you go Nanu Nanu, you're essentially just shifting that middle finger over, and you're moving the V from being between these two fingers to now between these two fingers. And so now the index finger is still doing some work, but it is actually cutting the load in half, because half the weight is going to be distributed to these two fingers and then the other part on this side. So that Nanu Nanu has helped relieve some of that stress that I've got on there, and I probably could have gone with just a straight wider bridge as opposed to even doing the Sarge Easter, but we actually started with the Sarge Easter, and when we added in the Nanu Nanu, it was very, very comfortable. And I also figured if I'm going to be switching from here to here, I could be adding load to this finger, and if I'm adding load to this finger, I didn't want to run the risk that I'm going to develop pain in this part of my hand, especially given my history of inflammation and arthritis. So I decided to keep the Sarge Easter portion of that grip so that I would help alleviate this pain. It also helps by getting the ball to go sit down further in the hand, so it actually helps the ball rotate down away from the finger closer to the palm of my hand. So the Nanu Nanu helped shift some of that weight. The Sarge Easter helped shift it down away from the finger, alleviating even more weight, and just made a really comfortable feel. Now the third part of it is that thumb, and why are we offsetting it and pitching it significantly to the left? Well, as you can see, if you hold your hand like this, I'm going to stand up here. If you hold your hand like this, which is what a typical grip would be, the thumb is up and it is actually creating a lift. This part, because the ball doesn't sink all the way down to the palm of your hand, it is just sinking to this part of your thumb, and so it's actually up off the palm. For a lot of people in their standard grip, they could actually stick their finger in here, and I'm going to try to do it like that. It creates this sort of space. And so a lot of people could actually fit their finger between the ball and that part of their hand. And I am trying to get the ball to rest more in the palm of my hand a little bit more. So in order to do that, my thumb is in the way, so I can't get it farther down. This part of my thumb is in the way, and I have to get it out of the way. And the best way to do that is to move it over. By shifting the thumb over, it flattens this part of my hand, or my palm, allows the ball to sit further down in my hand. The problem is if I shift my thumb over, I can't hinge my thumb real drastically to keep the thumb straight. Some people can, I cannot. And so this is why not only shifting it over to the left, which I know this is right depending on which way you're looking at it, but as you're looking at the ball, as I turn over, that's shifting it this way left. So shifting it to the left and then also pitching it to the left. Those two things combined are what allow me to be able to go from having this gap in my hand to now bringing the ball further down into the palm of my hand. And in doing that, I now have significantly less weight on my index finger, and it has completely alleviated the pain that I have in my index finger. So I realize this is a very drastic approach, a lot of things that I'm doing, but it's all in the effort of trying to alleviate pain. And I applaud John for helping me investigate and just really try with an old ball that I had on a whole bunch of things to really find what is it that's going to help solve that pain. And once we found it, I don't want to tweak it because it does feel so much better. I'm able to bowl. I bowled the 16-game Ironman tournament not that long ago. Zero pain in my finger. I bowl all league long. Zero pain in my finger. All these regionals, no pain in that finger. So it's completely alleviated that problem. And I really don't, with all these things, I don't notice anything negative in my release. It really hasn't changed my tilt. It hasn't really changed my rotation. My tilt might be slightly different, but it's not drastically different. My rev rate is still similar, and we remeasured my PAP. It is important that if you do any kind of changes to your grip, you should be remeasuring your PAP every couple years anyways, but if you make any big changes to your grip, you should definitely remeasure your PAP, because that can impact the layout of the ball and how you lay things out. So we did remeasure that when I did this. I haven't redone it in a few years, and I probably should do it again, but we did redo it, and now all my measurements are based off of my new PAP. I have a very comfortable grip, allows me to get through every tournament, so that's the reason that I've got this funky grip. It's not necessarily for everybody. I don't think you need to go with it, and that's fine, but the moral of the story is if you do have pain anywhere in your hand or even in your elbow or in other places, you could try doing different things with pitches, with the span, with whether you do Sarge Easter or not. You can try all of these different things in addition to maybe even moving your finger around. I did try just tucking my finger in when I had the regular grip. I would try bringing my finger in, but that created going from a wide base to a narrow base, and a narrow base meant as I bring the ball back, if I'm a little bit farther inside the ball, I lose it. It falls too far off, and I have a hard time getting back around. Or if I'm a little bit too far this way, it's easy for it to teeter and fall this way as well, and I end up coming around and spinning the ball. So I was having some terrible inconsistency on my release when I was just bringing my finger in, so that wasn't enough. I had to find another solution, and being able to bring the finger back out, Sarge Easter, changing the thumb, getting it into my palm, I'm now able to control it very well with a good release. So experiment. If you've got an old ball, experiment with some different drillings. If it's not right, plug it, re-drill it again, try something else. Same thing with layouts. If you have a layout of a ball that you don't love and you want to try, take an old ball and say, hey, let's plug it and let's change the angles on our drilling, change the layout, see what the difference is in the ball. Mess around with that. I'm all about experimentation if you've got an older ball that you can experiment with, and if you've got a pro shop that's willing to allow you to do that, or if you can afford to do the plugging and re-drilling the numerous times that you'd have to find it, but it's worth it in the end. So hopefully that helps give some direction on what I've got going on here. I am sure that there are going to be people in the future who don't see this video and are still going to ask me that question on every video that I've got, but I at least wanted to bring it to you so you knew why I'm doing what I'm doing. So there you have it. If you got any questions, throw them in the comments. If you got anything weird going on with your grip, let us know. Otherwise, make sure you hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you guys on the next video. Thanks for watching.